So welcome everyone to this first webinar in the series of webinars that we have started in CLE. The objective of these webinars is to trigger interaction among people who are interested in teaching, learning, education in general, on issues like learning, creativity, empathy, and education, things that we are all interested in, passionate about, and collectively evolve through discussion, through dialogue, better understanding, where we all can benefit. With that purpose, we have this first webinar where we are pleased to have Dr. Vivek. Vivek is an old friend of mine. I'll do a quick introduction and then I'll hand over the mic to Vivek. So Vivek he works in the area of behavioral public policy, looking at the link of behavioral science with the public policy, how behaviors can be changed for the good. One of his main areas of research and consulting in environment, he's been working in the areas of water policy and even other aspects of environment, energy and all. He's also been interested in education. And today the topic is the link between behavioral science and education, especially teaching. What is the link? And Vivek will talk about that, and hopefully the session will also be interactive. And Vivek, just to let you know the composition of audience. So here, majority of the people here are connected with CLE. They have been, teaching in our programs, just like you taught one batch in Kanpur. So a lot of people here have been teaching for a long time, actually. So they're all professionals in their own field, but they're also teaching on our programs. I can also see a couple of people who are from our partner NGOs. They are so they also are interested in education. They're running programs locally as well. So we will, in the interest of time, we'll skip individual introductions, and hopefully Vivek will allow enough time for interaction, and then we will probably also get to know each and every one of you and your views. So with that, I think I'll hand over the mic to Vivek, and just a small ground rule that let's mute ourselves. Let's keep the audio muted. Videos, you can keep the videos on if you wish to. And whenever you want to speak, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can even write a comment on the chat box, and we'll keep checking intermittently. Vivek will also keep doing so. And with that, Vivek, over to you.
Okay, thanks. I can see some, I think instructions have started coming in chat. Okay, I'll also keep that chat open. So thanks. Thanks for the nice introduction and context setting, Rahul. And good afternoon to all the teachers. It's nice to meet you through this forum. Thanks for this opportunity from CLE. So as Rahul was saying, I'm going to try and engage with you in the next almost an hour on the subject of teachers and behavioral science. And I would definitely like to, get you involved. So please, try and ask me questions or discuss or share your perspective. And I've tried to structure this workshop in such a way that we stop and discuss. So I will first give an introduction to this broad topic of what is behavioral science, just for the benefit of being on the same page. Most of you probably have some idea of what behavioral science is, but I'll give a brief introduction, and then we can discuss briefly what is the relevance of that to teaching and teachers. And then we'll come to the second part, where we'll take one aspect, the role of habits, especially in this case, the habits of teachers. And we'll go through again some more information about habits coming from behavioral science, including some recent research. And again, we'll discuss. So basically 2 parts, the introduction to behavioral science, and then second part will be on habits. So Rahul already mentioned that this is the first in a series, and from my perspective also, this is first in a series. If I get the opportunity to present maybe a couple of more topics specific to behavioral science, I will do that. So in each workshop, I'm hoping I'll make a short presentation and follow it up with a discussion. Now, what do we want to try and achieve out of it? I think Rahul can comment further, but what I understood is that can we, kind of remind ourselves of some general knowledge or general principles, as well as maybe some new knowledge. So the idea is that by getting exposed to or getting reminded about this knowledge, maybe it can really help the teachers and therefore the students. So you can consider, your own thoughts, share with it in this workshop. And subsequently, after you applied it, then maybe you can share your experience in a follow-up workshop as well. So that's the basic idea. And I'm hoping that in future I can cover some other interesting things, such as how underprivileged children learn, and how they are a little different from children who don't face those scarcity conditions. And in general, how children learn, those kind of things is what I have in mind for future workshops. Now, one disclaimer I would like to present: my role is that of a researcher. So if you see research papers and all, they are like very technical or written very carefully. So I've deliberately tried to simplify. I'm hoping that there is no crude simplification or oversimplification. So in case there are people in this audience who are also, interested in looking at the original sources because you want to know more, or you want to check the exact thing, the best thing would be to look at the original sources. Like today, I'll mainly be referring from some papers, and I can, circulate this presentation. All the references are there in this presentation, or even the files I can share separately. So now let's try to get into the topic, the first topic for today, that why should we bother about this field or discipline called behavioral science? Also, sometimes, there are various other names that are in use, such as behavioral, something like behavioral finance or behavioral economics, even social psychology, for instance, and even neuroscience. So all these are kind of, related disciplines. So what I have learned in the last 10 years or so, that actually the field of behavioral science has revolutionized human society around the world. But it's not so obvious, and it's not often talked about. And lots of use of social psychology is how it started, leading to the field of public relations, and how, large corporates used understanding of human mind and herd kind of mentality, group mentality, to create a very clear consumerist culture, which started largely in the rich Western countries, and then it has spread around the world. And how that has also led to large scale mental health issues, all sorts of conflicts, and definitely, inequality in terms of wealth and income and opportunity and so on. So unfortunately, the knowledge has largely been applied for, you can say, private interests, profit making, and things like that. And all of us can relate to, the kind of attractive advertisements and jingles and logos and things like that that we come across. So advertisers and marketers were among the first, after, I would say, politicians, especially people in Western Europe, such as Hitler, Mussolini, and all, were, really masters at creating mass following based on principles of psychology, and not, because they were lucky or something. It was a very conscious, thought through, science-based approach that they took to create what they created. And now in the last 10, 20 years, governments around the world have woken up to this reality that if there are corporations which are using this science for their benefits, why should governments not use that same science? So that's the genesis of this field of behavioral public policy. That fine, public policy traditionally came from finance and economics based information. But gradually, the role of psychology or broader behavioral science has also come in. And number of countries, including India, have now started having national level bodies looking at this subject. So Niti Aayog, for instance, in India is running a campaign, which any of you can look at, called LIFE, L-I-F-E, Lifestyle for the Environment, where they want to understand what ideas people have to influence lifestyle and make it better, and also benefit the environment. So in US and in some other places, especially in oil and gas companies, this has also been involved with how very systematically they have denied scientific findings, whether it's about global warming or it is about adverse effect of smoking or adverse effect of alcohol consumption and so on. So this is like the basic context I wanted to present. And of course, it's not as if people in science have been sitting quiet and just letting this happen. There are a number of scholars, I've just listed a few here, who have tried to educate and inform people. For instance, in the US, there is a very seasoned senior researcher in Phoenix, Arizona, Robert Cialdini, who has written several books and papers about the role of ethical influence. That fine, we should understand how to influence others, but can we help consumers, for instance, understand that they are being swayed by others? And how can consumers, overcome that and be better informed? There are guys like Tim Kazzer who have written that how the whole culture of mass consumerism or materialism, what kind of personal side effects or personal adverse effects it has led to. So these are not just their personal observations, but these are based on data and systematic research, because many of us have our own intuition or general sense of what is true. So that's great, and in fact those are the kind of things I would like to hear from you, because when I'm saying something, your own intuition, your own views would come to your mind. But in research, you have to back it up. You have to give systematic empirical evidence saying this is why what I'm saying or what I'm feeling is proven. So they have done that. And there are guys like Gerd Geigerenzer from Berlin at the Max Planck Institute, who have said that human beings, basically use very quick thinking, fast and frugal heuristics. Heuristics are shortcuts. We are very intelligent. So based on our experience, we use this shortcuts all the time. But in order to learn, we will need to detect influence, and we can develop skills so that we don't get fooled by problematic marketing or problematic propaganda by politicians or others. There are a large number of books that have been written in this topic. Some of them have become very popular. Probably the book Nudge, many of you may have heard the name. The author, one of the authors, Richard Taylor, subsequently won a Nobel Prize in economics, and the book influenced Robert Cialdini is what I was talking about. And on the right hand side is a lesser known book, but a very, very in academic circle, very well known book, that how we know what isn't so, that we know many things which actually are not true. And it's because of fallibility of our reasoning. So there are things we start believing that, oh, this is how I will become happy, or this is how I get satisfied, which are not really so, because that's what we have been influenced to believe, or even other mistakes. There are many flaws in our reasoning also. So this book is full of such research-based information on how in everyday thinking there are many things we take to be true, or we expect, but they are actually not actually true. So with this, I want to come to one very, very central thought that thanks Rahul for reminding me, and I added this slide after discussion with you, that one of the very central thoughts that has come into discussion is this whole idea of how do we think. So what broadly the science of behavioral science says that there are two ways we think, all humans, fast and slow. Uh, so fast thinking means, it's like automatic. You let's say you know how to read English, you're shown English text, you will automatically be able to see it and read it. You can't stop yourself, and say I'll not read it. The moment you see it, automatically you would read it. You see a face, you will immediately recognize, whether you know that person or not that person. So there is automatic thinking, and opposite to that is effortful thinking. Let's say you are learning a new script, like let's say you don't know Kannada, like I can speak a little bit, but I don't know Kannada. Let's say I'm learning Kannada script. It will be really effortful for me to read that, and I'll have to put conscious effort, attention, and so on. So there are many other details of what is fast thinking and what is slow thinking. The first few I want to just mention that fast thinking also is like intuitive, based on your experience, based on what you have already internalized, it comes. And it also associative. You see something, it automatically comes to you. And it is typically about short term. You have something in front of you, immediately there. On the right hand side, opposite to that is the slow thinking, which is reflective. You have to consciously, effortfully deliberate. Like let's say you're trying to do a maths problem, which is a little tougher than what you normally solve. Or you are trying to write better English because you're trying to write something in a newspaper, or something like that. You have to, take time, deliberate. You may have to analyze, and you may have to follow a sequence or algorithm in order to complete that. Yeah, I think Rahul, you have your hand
Vivek,
raised.
yeah. So since you mentioned math algorithm, so one example that Kahneman himself gives. So let's say if we ask somebody what is 2 plus 2, so that comes automatic. We don't, that's kind of hardwired in us. We don't have to think about it. Whereas if we give a slightly tougher mathematical question, let's say what is 34 multiplied by 14 or something like that, and we'll have to think it over it.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great example. And fast thinking is more or less same across all of us. And there are a few differences across people. It's more or less common across humans, whereas individual differences are there if it comes to slow thinking. There are people who are at higher level of, let's say, rational thinking or intelligence. They will be able to do maybe more of the slow thinking that some of us cannot do. So there are more gradations of slow thinking, whereas fast thinking is more or less same. And just above that, this thing about autonomous and algorithmic, this is actually central to the second part I'll be talking about, that how you may have an autonomous way of thinking, but it can be overridden. You can come up with an algorithm that, oh, I make this mistakes, and if I will make this mistake, what algorithm, or how will I trap that and do something else, what you have already deliberately thought of as a solution. Like so we'll come to this again in the next section. So all this is fine, but what does this mean to being a teacher or to teaching? So in fact, I'm hoping that while I have my own thoughts, I would like to actually hear from you that as we go through this session, that what all comes to your mind as we go through the content on behavioral science and later on habits. So our approach is that we'll try and share some research, and we will have a discussion. So in that process, we'll probably find more examples or more application. And I believe that since all of you are teaching children, slightly different age groups, and I think you also have mix of experienced teachers as well as young teachers, different age group of teachers, different levels of experience, possibly different backgrounds. So I think your own habits and your own approaches may also be fairly different from each other, because this organization didn't come up homogeneously in one place, selecting one type of people, but people who are passionate about teaching and who are willing to devote some time. So so that way I'm quite hopeful that this will create a good, interesting discussion. So before I come to second topic, I'll just take a pause here and see if there are any things to discuss or any questions on what is behavioral science, which is what I have tried to cover very, very briefly and in a very simple way. Or any other thoughts that came to your mind or questions from your own
So
experience.
Vivek has, if I have to quickly summarize, Vivek has kind of set a very quick context of drawing from behavioral science. And maybe we could take a few questions now, and then probably, hopefully, Vivek will talk about the implication for teachers after a while.
Yeah, in the habit section, I'll be doing that.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think there's something in chat.
That I think Shalini has.
Okay, Shalini has put, okay.
So Vivek, one point maybe I can add just to what you're talking about in terms of fast and slow thinking. So one very relevant point that Kahneman makes is that so there are certain responses that we give automatically, right? And certain reactions, certain responses we to certain situations or questions come automatically from us. We don't think about it. A very silly example is 2 + 2 = 4. So we don't actually mentally do the calculation in our mind. It's hard. It's like automatic, right? And what is automatic in our mind also changes over time, right? Some more things would become automatic as we learn and internalize and practice them. So that's an important point probably. And another important point he makes is that automatic response is not always bad. Sometimes it helps us because in certain situations we need to actually, we don't have much of time to think. We need to respond immediately. For example, if somebody sees a snake, or let's say there's some crisis situation, right? Whereas it also happens very often that when we respond automatically through our automatic mode of thinking, which is type 1, we also at times make mistakes. That's an important point, probably. Right?
Yeah. Right. I'll give an example. Yeah. Like it's been studied in many different places. An experiment that, let's say you are conducting an experiment on exactly this kind of thought validation. You go to a street and you look up, and you maybe have one or two others who are looking up. Like let's say there is a high-rise building and you're just looking up. You'll find that automatically so many people will, who are passing will also look up. That's like naturally what people will do.
Okay.
So it's very easy to, influence people and, induce them into doing something as silly as that without there being really anything. You're just looking up. So, okay, I think there is a question or something.
Divya has a question. Yeah.
Hi, Vivek. I don't know, it's just an impulse. I just wanted to ask, can we say that fast thinking is biased or predecisive based on predecisions?
Yeah, good question. Fast thinking is fast. Whether it's biased or not depends. Let's say you have some biases and you are, having some beliefs which are biased. So your fast thinking would be influenced by that. If your thinking is not biased, then that fast thinking will also not be biased. But yes, very commonly in most societies, we live with biases, we live with stereotypes. So we may have a certain mental model or impression about so many things. That's how humans are. We keep our life simple. We can't keep thinking and examining and analyzing in full detail every situation. We go with very fast shortcuts. So fast thinking is not necessarily biased. It depends on that subject and that person.
Quick decisions and quick judgments.
Yes, Divya.
Sorry, say that again, Divya.
I'm saying quick decisions and quick judgments are there in fast thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of the time, not always, but most of the times.
Quick and automatic. Yeah. And as Vivek said, Divya, fast thinking is also helpful at times.
It is.
Slow thinking may sound to be more logical, more rational, but doing slow thinking every time consumes a lot of mental energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with speed of our lives, especially in large cities, what's happened is we don't have much time to do slow thinking. So that's also become a big problem. that these days people often just don't have the time, patience, energy, inclination to think. They just go with the flow. Whatever is convenient, easily available, accessible, because it's difficult, it is effortful, it
Slow
costs in
thinking is
terms of
effortful.
time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is where the consumerism comes in the prospect, because
Yeah, it is partly through that, and it's partly through the whole social pressure that is created because
right.
others are doing it. There's certain expectation that, oh, what is good life and what is aspirational life and so on. So there is a lot of factors, not just past thinking, but people feel pressurized to behave like what the society expects from
In
them.
a certain way, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Bhama
much.
also. Yes,
Thank you.
Divya.
Yeah, Bama has a question.
Bhama has a question. Yes.
Yeah, no, does this slow thinking and fast thinking, does it happen in different parts of our brain? Like, are the different,
Yeah.
Are there different parts of the brain? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
May
partly.
not be.
So I don't have a very technical answer. I don't want to say something which is incomplete or confusing, but short answer is partly. That yes, there are parts of the brain, but this is an area of active research actually. That much I know, that it is not as if there are clearly demarcated portions that don't have overlapping responsibilities. So it's partly true that there are different parts of brain, like things like what was, let's say, important for our survival, like I think Rahul just mentioned about snakes some time back. So let's say you go into a dark room and you see something which may look like a snake. You might immediately think it's a snake and act assuming it's a snake, but it might be just a rod or stick or something. Only when you turn on the light or something you might realize. So this is in the the primitive or the the basal part of the brain, where how humans and other animals, all of us have
yeah,
these basic
yeah,
instincts.
yeah,
But yeah, there are more like the frontal cortex or evolved thinking that is there
yeah, the
in the
reasoning
frontal
part of the
part.
brain. Yeah,
So these basic you can say differences in parts are there, but they have also realized, the researchers in neuroscience, that it's not a strict
Yeah.
separation. There is
Yeah.
and also it's not as if we are thinking only type 1 or type 2 at a given point of time. Actually, at any point of time we have type 1, type 2, and interaction between type 1 and type 2 happening. It's not as if
Yeah.
when I'm doing automatic thinking, there is nothing happening at the back of my mind, or no slow thinking happening. Our responses are actually based on a combination of type 1, type 2, and the interaction between type 1 and type 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Bhama, Vivek's later point is relevant. So I think Kahneman also clarifies this, that it may not be separate parts in the brain. It's more in terms of two modes of thinking.
I see.
But they interact with each other. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Maybe if there are no more questions, I'll come to the second part, which is about habits, which is the focus of this workshop. And this being the first, I have spent half an hour of the workshop on the broad topic, but now I can dive into habits. Unless there are any critical questions, I'll keep going. Okay. So I'll start with one, tweet from a well-known scholar in the field of habits, a professor named Wendy Wood, and I'll just maybe take 30 seconds. You can all hopefully see the screen and read it.
So these teachers develop some habit because of which they stop learning new skills.
Yeah. So so this is paper that she refers to, Hobbes et al., is the main paper I'll be focusing on today, because it's a recent research and it is building on existing knowledge in the field of behavioral science and teaching. So it's kind of very well known that human beings are automatically inclined to form habits when you find repetitive settings. And classroom, whether it is in person or online, is an example of, it's a classic example of repeated settings, same kind of thing again and again, same Zoom class and same set of students, maybe even same time of the day and so on. So when you have same setting repeating yourself again and again, that's how human mind works. And it's actually a great tool. Habits can be very powerful to free up your mental capacity. If every time you have to think about everything and then decide, you just don't have the working memory to do all that. So young teachers or new teachers tend to internalize these settings and develop habits. But then in the same process, their effectiveness tends to start leveling off, which is the new finding, that teacher effectiveness levels off over time. So let me go into a little bit more detail on what this paper is saying. This is the cover of the paper from a journal called Review of Education, published just about year and a half back, which says that habit formation limits growth in teacher effectiveness. This is the main point of this paper. And this is based on evidence from both social sciences and neurosciences. So they have not just taken these, let's say, based on interviews or surveys, but they have also looked at neuroscience measurements. So it's and it's published in a very good journal. And Professor Wendy Wood, is one of the best-known scholars in the world on the topic of habits. She has written lots of materials on habits over the last 2-3 decades, I think. Let me go into a little bit more detail on what is this paper talking about. These are a few key statements I have directly taken from the paper without really editing it much. So first thing I want to say is that teachers become rapidly more effective during the early years of their career. So when you have a new teacher who's learning to teach for the first time, they learn and typically they become very effective very quickly. But later on, their effectiveness tends to slow down. Why? The research says that it happens, the growth of effectiveness or learning in the teachers slows down because whatever they are practicing becomes habitual. And now, they are not actively thinking and trying to figure out what is best and what should I do, but whatever they have got used to on the average, that becomes their norm. And in general, teaching, like I was saying, is very, very conducive to habit formation. Most repetitive activities are, and teaching is no exception. And related point is this bullet point 4, that teachers' behavior becomes automatic around the time that teacher effectiveness begins to level off. So these two things happen at the same time. So what does this mean? If you put it all together, this evidence, it is telling us that if you look at professional development of teachers, if you want to become better teacher yourself, or you want to help others become better teachers, then there should be repeated practice in order to override and upgrade existing habits. This is the main point of this paper, that developing teachers would mean that you have to identify what do you need to upgrade as your habits, and how to override maybe some habits which are not so helpful, and retain habits which are beneficial. So this is, I think, the main thing as far as this paper is concerned. Now, in order to have a discussion, I have also, try to write a little bit for you about what are habits, and so I'll just go through that, and then we will have a discussion. So first of all, why so much importance I'm giving to habits, right? All of us have habits, but why is it important? So like we were saying some time back, habits are our default response. Without another much more powerful factor, whatever is our habitual response, that's what we will give. So is there something else which is more powerful, which will change us to do something other than what is our habitual response? And on the plus side, habits make us efficient because we all have, limited mental capacity or cognitive capacity. So if we have habits which are useful to the setting in which we are operating, it allows us to become more efficient. And habits in many ways are, very, very central to the outcomes or how we behave. Good habits help us provide, good in the sense of, what is good for a given context, not in the absolute sense, but the good habits in a given context or a requirement are central to our good. And likewise, bad habits become an obstacle or a barrier to, doing better. If we did not have a habit and we have to think through, then we are motivated by the setting, the goal, and our, purpose, and we might be able to do better. So another way of looking at it is that habits interfere with your goals, right? You can easily relate to this thinking of, let's say let's say you are somebody who's been told by doctor to avoid sweets because you are, on a little diet. So if your habits are to have sweets after every meal, but your goal is to have, no sweets, then your habits and your goals are in conflict. So if you set a goal saying, okay, I don't want to have sweets, or I want to teach in a certain way, or I want to pay attention to a certain group of students that I'm maybe not paying so much attention to, or I'm paying unequal attention in class, whatever may be that goal that you set, setting up that goal and being consciously, aware of that goal, keeping that in your mind, in your attention, can help you in moving towards the goal that you have. But your habits can do just the opposite. The habits, if they are in conflict with your goal, they can derail your performance. So this is why habits are important. How do habits form? So this very simple chart taken from a paper, it says that you have some cue or setting which you face regularly, and you do something in response to that setting. Then gradually over time, this becomes automatic and you form a habit which gets, automatic, which becomes part of your personality, which becomes part of your, things that you can do very efficiently without even thinking about it. And how habits get activated, now that you have a habit, when will it get used or activated, is that now you have the same cue. So then it automatically activates the habit that you have formed in response to that cue or setting. And you will perform the same kind of habitual action. But if on the bottom right, if there are other forms of influence, like a new goal or a new setting or something else that you want to bring, like a change in yourself or a change in setting, that can either further reinforce that habit, or if it's in conflict, it can, prevent that habitual action from happening. So this is a very simple, kind of simplified also representation of how habits form and how habits get activated. Another way of looking at it is that there are three parts of a habit: a stimulus, a response, and an outcome. So you have a setting or a situation that provides you some sort of trigger. This might be your classroom. This might be some, let's say, kind of, let's say, misbehavior that a particular child does, or even it might be something positive also, that you have a very bright student who speaks all the time, and you have some, response which you have got used to, and even maybe some thought or feeling that comes along with it. And you have an outcome. Usually it's a satisfying outcome for you. That's where habits form, that you have a satisfying outcome, and that reinforces this pattern of responding in a certain way to a certain stimulus. So I've just tried to explain the meaning of what is a habit, and how we can kind of decompose it into certain parts to understand it better. And I was saying earlier also that may be possible to change a habit through a goal. So what you see in the middle as arrows in this rectangular box, this is like how the habits normally perform, that you have some cues in your context, and you, in your memory, you already have a habit form, and you'll do the habitual response. But if you create certain goals, then that goal can influence how you interpret the context itself and what you do, and therefore it might lead to a different outcome which is more in line with what you are trying to do. So with that, I want to end with this set of slides saying that habits, because of their nature, are characterized by insensitivity. If we are habituated to something, we become insensitive, we work automatically and we may not even realize what we are doing. So by the way, everything that I'm saying here applies to me as well and to all of us, right? This is general science. So I'm sure I have habits that are good habits in the current context, that are bad habits, and by nature I would have become insensitive to it because it's become part of me. I'm not thinking about it. so by some reflection or feedback or in some other ways, it may be possible for me to identify where have I become insensitive and what kind of change that I want to bring, and define some goals towards it. So with this, I will take a pause and stop for any questions. And after this, we will also I have written 1 or 2 questions which I want to pose to the teachers. But before that, let's discuss any questions or any other thoughts that come to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. Please feel free to ask questions or even make a comment or share your observation.
Yeah. Teaching, while I'm waiting, please think of what is coming to your mind. Teaching is a very, you can say, dynamic activity, right? You are interacting with live audience, whether in a classroom or online. And therefore, there is anyway a lot of mental load. You have your core, some course you are teaching, you have something in mind that this is what I want to cover, this how I want to cover. So it's very, very natural for us to just fall into a pattern, and that helps also. But then what maybe if you were to start all over again, if there was a way to erase that and start all over again, you may not form the same patterns. Yeah.
Yes, that is right, Vivek.
Are there any questions about what are habits, how are they formed, any of this? Very quickly I went through this whole ideas of how habits form, how they get activated, and so on. Are there any questions on what I presented?
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Hi,
Shalini.
Shalini.
Yeah. So you said like because we form patterns, right? So sometimes it's difficult to break a pattern, right? So if you have a goal, is it like that easier because you said it's interlinked? So when there is a goal, does that help in breaking patterns?
Yes. Yeah, if you can identify a goal and you can clearly articulate, through some analysis or thinking in your mind that, okay, how this goal is in conflict or it's interfering with what my habitual response is, right? Like, let's say you want to treat all students, equally, but that's not what's been happening for some reason. Let's say you are paying more attention to some students, whatever may be the reason. You may be paying more attention to the brighter students or the weaker student. But let's say if your goal is that all of them need to get equal attention, then if you identify that as a goal, it can interfere with how you behave in a class, how much attention you give, how do you invoke discussions, who do you ask, who do you not ask again and again, right? So what kind of patterns you have, only the individual can really reflect on it and come up with and that's where it helps to sometimes ask somebody else who's also observing you. They would also need to know some of these ideas, and you and that person will need to be kind of very open or friendly, because this is not to point mistakes or anything. That's not what we are trying to do here. We are just trying to learn. We are just trying to become even more effective. I'm sure all of you are very passionate teachers. That's why you are here. So this is not to criticize anything. This is just to try and learn something more. And even if you already knew all this, it's quite possible that some of you know everything that I said. Even then, I'm hoping that it will serve as a attention mechanism, that this will come in your mind, and now you might consciously do something about it.
Yes, Divya has a question. Divya and then Monica.
Yeah.
Divya, you want to go first?
Yeah. So if means I don't know. Okay. So nudging a student for improvement, does it lead to a better performance, or hand-holding leads to a better performance? Because automatically, like fast thinking, nudging becomes main trait of teachers who are traditionally into the profession, like who are traditionally there. You keep on nudging the student, but of course it has some negative impact. But behave as per the principles of behavioral science, can it lead to anything positive also? If the child is not that highly motivated.
So Divya, just to make sure I understand what you mean by nudging, I think by nudging you mean that, gently, telling something or giving some input, but not spending a lot of time or guiding.
So nudging is of course not anything which is gentle. Like it's like pushing, right?
Okay.
You're pushing a student, which I guess becomes a very common practice among teachers over the
years. So you mean pushing hard? Right?
Yeah, pushing hard, picking a student, asking questions every time.
A common way a teacher might deal with the student. Yeah.
Because we think that it brings more participation in a class. Is it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, is it?
You want to
which is better? You're saying is pushing hard better or hand holding better? Something like that.
Yeah.
So incidentally, this is like fitting with another workshop I'm hoping to have, which is more on how children learn. But I'll try and answer, although this is not really part of teachers' habits. I think today in practice, you might find success in both of these, right? Some people might have succeeded by pushing hard. Some people might have succeeded by hand holding. And this is actually the tricky thing in life, that, what research or science, especially social science, shows are, averages or broad patterns, but they can always be exceptions. So both could work, but my sense is that, it's generally problematic to push hard, and the child's motivation and interest might further drop. It might be preferred if you can, create some interest, curiosity, maybe in some playful way, because that's how humans have evolved. Humans have evolved to learn in natural setting, through exploration and curiosity and so on, and not because they were under the gun to perform. Under the gun to perform, people tend to get stressed, and only automatic behavior will come. Reflection, thinking, these are the kind of things central to learning, right? Learning is about slow thinking. Learning happens through slow processes. It doesn't happen, the automatic, what we know. We don't learn, just by thinking fast. So my preference would be that, hand holding and guiding. Pushing hard might have also worked for some teachers.
A mix of both.
Pushing hard might have worked, but it's also comes with the risk of, demotivating the child, and maybe even creating some undue stress, which might further deteriorate the performance. In fact, my own limited experience with underprivileged children is that, if you put them under stress, they will perform even worse.
That's what I ask you. Until unless a child is highly motivated, you can't nudge or push. Right? So, okay, it should be a mix of both.
No, I did say that. I said I think it's preferred to have a hand-holding sort of approach than to push hard.
Okay.
You see, there is a difference between being hard and being firm. So you gently stick to your approach. You keep firm, right, to what you want. You don't become lenient or too easy, but you be polite, be kind, be empathetic. That's what I think science tells. You don't have to become, too easygoing. You can be firm, but you can still be polite and nice and friendly and all that.
A lot of patience. Then Monica, you want to go next?
Thank you.
Thanks,
thank you. Actually, I just wanted to add on to my experience. Like, I just want to share some
Yeah,
things.
sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Please, that will be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I've been doing science experiments with Apnagar children. And what I've observed is,
They're
like,
very
we have been
popular,
doing it
Monica.
since
Your experiments are a hit. Children look forward to
I
it.
guess, over 8 months
Yeah.
time now.
Yeah.
And what has happened is now, if, they have some things that are missing. So initially we used to do experiments, which they, they would love to, it was like magic for them, or, they knew the principle, but they didn't know exactly what was happening. So we actually kind of break the ice with them in that sense. And then now what is happening is they are turning up with ideas. Let us try it this way, and let us try it the other way, and let us see if it works. Because there was some, last 2 experiments that I was doing, it was an observation that, even I was not sure if it would work the way I really wanted to, because I was doing it online, and they had to be guided. So they themselves started trying in different ways to make it work. And it was really nice, because after so much time of a rapport between the teacher and the student, and it is not that 1 or 2 students are doing it, it is the entire group who is involved. So I also always make it a point, as you said, that it is not always nudging, but trying to encourage each and everyone to give their views. So they will take the mic by turns, and then they will tell what they understood from the experiment, or they would try to show by a drawing what was today's experiment, and then they'd send me pictures. So that was in an online setting. It was really good in that way. And yeah, it's always about I have learned this over the years, that a teacher has to think on her toes. Like, it's not there's no rule book. So you will be facing so many different situations, and for that, if you know the child's background, or know the child's pattern of thinking, or his economic background, or what he's doing around, it will be easier for you to get to him or her, and get out what you want from the child. Like, the way to critical thinking or asking questions, that is actually really a very what to say, very dynamic thing. It is not something static, or something that
interaction.
Very dynamic. And it varies from every child. It varies from child to child. So I have always wanted such an interaction with children. I don't believe in teaching 500 children at a time. I feel that looking at their face, I would be able to gauge what they are thinking, and then probably ask or respond in that way.
Great. Yeah, the example you gave is wonderful. And I think if you can create that sort of a setting where children can feel comfortable coming and talking, and they feel that attention is being paid to them, regardless of their performance in the class.
Yes.
That would be a
regardless
really
whether
nice
they are
practice,
right or wrong. That
regardless
is what
whether
is
they are
very
right
important.
Right.
Otherwise they will not share. So if you have an open environment, and if they are allowed to be making mistakes or being wrong, because you also show that you can be wrong sometimes, then it actually works.
Important.
Thank you.
And Monica,
Thank
we
you,
know
Monica,
what you're
for sharing
saying
that,
is true, because we have seen Monica's classes, the effect that they've had on the children. So Saroj, you want to go next? We have limited time, so Vivek, can we just take a few people who have raised their hand?
Yeah, please. Yeah, let's listen to Sarojji. Hello,
Sarojji, and then Kavita.
My topic, I don't know whether I'm relevant to whatever you are speaking. This is my personal experience with my daughter when she was a teenager. And my colleague who is my friend even now, she had a very bad habit of shrugging her shoulders like this while teaching. You know,
Okay.
she had that habit while teaching or writing on the board, and my daughter developed it so, compulsively. It was difficult for us to make her understand, keep doing this. Whenever we go out, she started doing that. So these habits, how the teachers can, when they are doing their training, I think this body language and some things has to be developed as a teacher. That is very important, I felt, because it was very difficult for my daughter to leave that habit.
Leave that habit. Oh, very interesting. Oh, that's your first-hand example of power of teachers, right? How even something, like a bodily gesture, your daughter picked up and made it a part of her habits. That's interesting, really. It kind of confirms the power of habits
power of habits,
and the influence that teachers have in forming habits amongst children.
Like children observe the teacher very, seriously when they are taking the class, and they learn so many things from them. They keep observing. So it is very important, I feel, for a teacher to have that, personality where they have their body language trained. And even the movements and all that. That is what I feel as a teacher of so many years.
Yeah, I'm sure all of us have, faced teachers who we love, teachers who we don't like, and even, some of us have made fun of teachers. So if as a teacher, we now are in the role of, on the other side, if we are ourselves teachers, what kind of, impression we would want our students to have.
We have
I think something like a
student imitating teacher. When Teachers' Day comes, or when Children's Day comes, when Teachers' Day, they imitate the teacher. They won't tell who it is. So all these things.
Right.
Thank you, Saroji. So Kavita had raised her hand, but she withdrew it. So Kavita, you still want to kind of make your comment or question?
Yes, Rahul. I said shortage of time, so I thought I can ask later.
I mean, only a few people have raised their hands, so most welcome, Kavita. We still have a few minutes before we close.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Vivek. I have a question related to student behavior. So you are talking about teaching teachers' behavior. So I feel the student behavior also changes from segment to segment. So isn't it necessary that the teacher how to study the student, their behavior, their nature, background, etc. Before they change their behaving sense? For example, people, students from underprivileged sector, so they have a different approach to each and everything. So which is the important thing for a teacher in that segment, like how they can inspire more?
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right that not all segments are the same. Of course, all are, having some basic similarities in terms of how humans learn or how children learn. But generally, I'm hoping to do a session on this. Rahul and I were discussing it this morning also on learning specifically for underprivileged children, what is different about them. But one of the main points I think is that, the amount of you can say in like computer type of term, free memory, amount of free memory that is available in underprivileged children tends to be much smaller. They are burdened. They have probably had a very difficult upbringing. They probably still have a lot of risks that they are aware of about their future, maybe even about their present. Hopefully all the children that you are teaching are settled at one place, and they don't have day-to-day risks about, say, food and shelter and so on. But because they have perhaps gone through such living conditions and they are probably very familiar with it and the kind of problems it brings to their life and health and so on, they tend to have smaller free capacity to process information. So they might need more motivation. They might in some way need to have some faith that what they are doing gives them better chances if they have that faith in the environment and in the system that they are embedded in. That might help. But you're absolutely right. These children that you are teaching may not be similar to let's say a middle class group of children that you may be teaching. The middle class children will probably have their own set of distractions. It might be the mobile phone or the friends or something else. So knowing the children, understanding them definitely would be a big advantage. I can't deny that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Monica, you have your hand raised. You want to?
I think she asked, probably it's not gone down. Yeah, previous.
Yeah.
So Rahul, I think I will leave with these couple of slides.
Yes.
We can probably have a follow-up discussion, or if anyone wants, I can continue for some more time.
Maybe in 2 or 3 minutes we could just wrap it up.
We can take. Yeah, I'll just present 2 slides where I had written 2 sets of questions. So one is overall change in habits of teachers, that if based on this presentation or in general, based on your experience, what teacher can change in themselves. And I've already made the second point that the habits are not necessarily bad, but unfortunately habits bring insensitivity or rigidity. So our ability to observe, our ability to respond gets limited by our habits. And that's where, it will be useful to watch out for what is really your purpose or intention versus what kind of actions or outcomes you are achieving, watching out for this. And the next one was, more specific to underprivileged children, which we'll try and cover in a follow-up workshop. All right.
Vivek.
So thanks to each one of you for your attention. Yeah, I think Divya has
comment from Divya.
Divya?
Actually, no, it was just the influence and power of a teacher. I wanted to share another experience, which was like, I did something when as a first grader, my science teacher told us that we should chew our food 32 times.
Okay.
And diligently, few of us, we used to do that for a very long time. Each and every bite we used to chew for 32 times to have a proper digestion. So I guess teachers.
Another example of the power of the teacher.
Yeah, actually. So later, so we were told that it is not that necessary. You have to chew it properly, but not 32 times. So I guess while making such examples or giving such instructions, I guess teachers should be little.
Have to be careful, sensitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think the teacher got a good, shortcut, 32 teeth, 32 times chew, just to make it simple.
Simple, right?
Yeah. Interesting example. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vivek. It was wonderful, short and wonderful, and I think some good questions.
Yeah, I hope it was of some use, because I this is my job, to read and write, so I don't mind talking about what I'm reading and writing. But I hope it was of some use to you, and maybe you will take some time to think, do the slow thinking, the difficult part, and see, what do you feel about your own habits. It's not so easy. But if you decide, it can be, you will find something. I feel all of us.
The broad solution, Vivek, you have given is we should keep reminding ourselves of the desirable goals and keep aware of the conflicts they create, so that we try to resolve the conflicts. Right?
Yeah, this slide that you have certain habits, whereas your goals may be, something slightly different. So always keep, and goal written here just at very high level. You may have some 10 things under it. So you can think of those 10 things and what is the kind of, your current pattern. Is there any tweak required to meet each one of those 10 goals, or whatever, 5 goals, whatever you might have in your teaching role as an individual.
Vivek, I hope you can share your slides later on. We'll
what I have emailed you, you can share with your colleagues. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. Thank you all the participants for joining. And even if you have questions later on, please feel free to pass them on to us, and we'll share it with Vivek, and we could exchange Vivek's response through email or other means as well.
Sure, absolutely. All right, then take care. You
Thank
guys
you.
have a
There are
good
some
day. Yeah.
comments
Thank
on the
you.
chat box, Vivek. You can just have a look at them. Generally, people
Yeah.
are giving positive comments.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No question.
Very nice that very nice to have this opportunity, Rahul, Shalini, and Leela.
I think this is a great start, Vivek, to our series of webinars, and this was very appropriate. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye. 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 Have a nice day.
You too.